Determinism and calculation. Dreams are great evidence that the brain and the mind are material and not some magic matter. We can see how thoughts come to mind that we clearly did not decide to have. In waking life, information is sent to the mind and the rest of the brain and filtered through the other parts of the brain, which goes into whatever region or regions constitute the mind. In response to this information, which is transferred in the form of neural patterns, the bundles of neurons in the mind respond to this information just like any machine. And the neurons throughout the brain are arranged in a manner that certain patterns transfer through much faster than others. The pattern for scary monster thing dead ahead transfers very fast because of however the neurons and synapses are organized. It's an incredible machine, and it's all predetermined as much as an atom is predetermined. Because the brain is made up of atoms, it behaves as deterministically as an extremely complex arrangement of atoms, because that's what it is. So if one wants to make a case that our actions are not predetermined, it will not be a matter specific to the brain. Consciousness, this I, is not evidence of anything non-mechanistic. For all we know, rocks and electrical currents could have an I. But the brain is part of an organ system, and the brain includes the gray matter, but also those medulla and pons things, and the nerves which go throughout the entire body. So the brain is spread throughout the body and most concentrated in the head, and this explains phantom limb phenomenon. It's easy to understand determinism, but the brain cannot calculate itself. It can imagine super tiny particles and imagine super tiny particles forming a larger structure. And then it can imagine a series of these discrete structures interacting. It can even imagine it's not discrete structures, but really a series of smaller particles interacting. But it cannot calculate all of those particles and all of those interactions. That is, just because you understand how atoms interact, then molecules, then cells, and then you understand that, and then you can understand that cells interact, right? And you understand that cells are made of atoms, doesn't mean you can direct process at the cellular level in any meaningful sense, right? Just because you can calculate a cell, and just because you can calculate a series of cells, and just because you can calculate the organs which are made up of cells, doesn't mean you can direct process all of those cells. For example, take a mechanical pencil. If you open up the mechanical pencil, you will see a spring and some things that go in and out, and however the mechanical pencil works. I can't calculate the mechanical pencil, so I just assume a mechanical pencil has free will. There's a joke there. And so you can say, oh, well, there's an eraser, and there's some eraser crud. Some of the eraser comes off in the slot, and the plastic thing has some stuff in it. And you'll do all these things to describe a mechanical pencil. You won't say atom 1, atom 2, atom 3, atom 4, of course, which would itself be modeling the interactions of particles in terms of atoms, but I digress. And so my theory is that consciousness is the brain modeling itself. That the you is just a model of the brain. And you react to stimuli. But your reactions are literally mind-bogglingly complicated. Nobody can determine how you will react to any stimuli. Sometimes not even you can. And it appears as if you are making decisions independent of the world, unlike a car engine, which is obviously deterministic. And just because you can't calculate the car engine or know how it works doesn't mean you ascribe to it free will, right? Just because and like on a computer, just because you can't calculate the computer, and just because you don't know exactly what the computer is going to do at any moment, doesn't mean you ascribe to the computer free will. You've seen diagrams. You know the combustion of gasoline is deterministic. And even insects have brains that are so simple that their deterministic nature is obvious. Even if you cannot calculate what an ant will do from 1 second to the next, after following an ant along, looking at it, and analyzing its behavior, you will see enough patterns form to know that the ant's behavior is deterministic. Right? And you may not be able to fully predict what an ant is going to do in response to any stimuli. You've seen the predictability enough to recognize that the ant is just a machine. But as you get more complicated machines, the calculations become too much and free will is assumed. And I know it's not true, but I functionally assume free will when dealing with other humans, even though humans are to varying degrees also predictable. And of course it was determined that I would assume free will from any point in time. Now, I am not certain that determinism is true, but I am certain that humans behave as deterministically as atoms. I know there's lots of stuff coming forward about how time may not be linear and atoms may behave non-deterministically, but they behave deterministically enough to where I see the world as a complex machine. That I assume free will in others makes perfect sense because this consciousness, this I, is a result of the brain not being able to calculate itself and assuming free will of itself.